heading into a weekend. We have some MLB, the second week of football with the preseason back again. And Brett, we have the FedEx Cup playoffs starting pretty soon in the PGA, plus some UFC. It's a packed full weekend of sports. I'm Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, as always. This is episode 159 of The Next Best Bet. And Brett, if we take a look at how we did last episode, the only bet I won was my pick of the pod, so I'm keeping the streak going with my locks. The Rays minus 1.5, they won on that plus 115 measure. But man, Cleveland versus Minnesota, because I missed on that over-under at 10, 9 runs were scored. And then I took it again the next day, and 9 runs were scored again. And then the third day I didn't take it, and the over hit. It felt like karma. It felt terrible.
Yeah, that's someone's messing with you, Higgins. But I went 1-0 last week, so undefeated episode for your boy. Couldn't lose. Won the Levy lock. Won all my other picks. Won some picks I didn't give out, right? Just won everything last week. 1-0, can't beat it.
Absolutely. 1-0 is a great way to go. So let's go into our beginner's boulevard, Brett. And this is a term that is used to help handicap bets. We're going to talk about expected value. And this is actually a mathematic equation that you can use to help figure out whether or not the bet that you're placing is a good bet. This is one of the metrics that you can use. Expected value is an equation that helps determine if the odds listed at a sportsbook match the probability of a winning bet. And so the equation, and I'll show it on our screen in the definition, but it's the amount won per bet multiplied by the probability of winning, and then that's subtracted by, within parentheses, the amount lost per bet or your stake on a bet multiplied by the probability of losing. And so if this number ends up coming out positive, you have a positive EV. And if it comes out negative, you have a negative EV. Every once in a while, it comes out neutral or at exactly zero, but typically, you're always looking for that positive EV to get an extra little bit return from the book.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal, is to place as many positive EV bets, and eventually you will become a winner, Higgins.
Yeah, and within that mathematical equation, Brett, there's actually another one, because if you want to figure out the probability of winning or probability of losing, there's another math equation that you can do to figure out those probabilities. So lots of math that goes into sports betting when you actually start looking at handicapping and the analytics of everything. But let's jump into our MLB, where the stats actually have some merit, because we're all the way into midway of August at this point. These seasons are fully developed. We are getting a full scope of what these teams are at right now. So I have 3 picks going into Thursday's games, Brett. And the Tampa Bay Rays and the Baltimore Orioles are playing, and I love this over. And the reason I really love this over is because Tampa Bay's been hitting the over against Baltimore in this series on their own. So this over-under sitting at 8.5 is kind of surprising to me, because in the first game, Tampa Bay beat Baltimore 9-2. In the second game on Tuesday, Tampa Bay beat Baltimore 10-0. And then you look at them who are playing right now, Brett, it's 7-4. This over-under does not make a lot of sense to me. You have 2 pitchers on the mound that, they're bullpen pitchers, kind of. You have Jorge Lopez on the mound for the Baltimore Orioles, who has an ERA north of 6. You have Shane McClanahan on the mound for the Tampa Bay Rays, who has an ERA just under 4. This over-under at 8.5, maybe it's a trap, but I'm going to fall for it. I'm taking that over.
Yeah, McClanahan's only going to go 4 innings, and then others will take over. Lopez has just not been very good for Baltimore. I don't imagine he's in the rotation next year. But yeah, I would say the over makes some sense there. Although that's a game, Higgins, just pretty honestly, would have no interest in betting a Rays Rays Orioles game at this point. Rays Blue Jays would be a lot
Shows
more
how much you
interesting.
care.
Rays Blue Jays would be a lot more interesting. I'd be into that one.
Absolutely. This is an early morning Thursday game as well. At least early morning on the West Coast. It's a 10 a.m. game. It's technically an afternoon game on the East Coast with a 1 p.m. first pitch. Brett, another game that I'm looking at is the Mariners in Texas facing off against the Rangers. This series has been interesting so far. We have Chris Flexen on the mound for Seattle facing off against Spencer Howard. And I'm taking Seattle -1.5 at plus 100 odds. There's a few reasons why. Seattle is the second best team in the MLB against the run line, trailing only the San Francisco Giants. Seattle's 69 and 51. And the Texas Rangers, they are the fourth worst in the MLB against the run line. And then on top of that, you look at the pitcher, Spencer Howard, who's on the mound for Texas. He has one outing for 5 innings so far in his major league season this year. And then you have Seattle, who is desperately trying to potentially catch up in the AL wildcard scenario. They are still trying to scramble and play for their lives, even though they are 6.5 games back in their division. So there's a lot left to play for Seattle, not as much for Texas. I really like Seattle -1.5, and I'm getting them at this plus 100 odds on Wednesday night because I wouldn't be surprised if on Thursday they're not going to be in that positive value.
Yeah, Spencer Howard came over from Philadelphia in the Kyle Gibson trade, one of the former top prospects in the Phillies organization. Struggled in 2020 when he was with the Phillies. So they were, trying to rehab him a little bit, get him back to that top prospect form, but hasn't really worked out, Higgins. Again, this is a tough game because, you don't expect to be Texas to be too motivated to win here. These games mean a lot for Seattle with the wild card and the AL West. So they're still alive. There's still some time for Seattle. They're running out, so they cannot be losing games to the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, they really can't. And Brett, there's one other baseball game that I do want to talk about. This one is an NL East versus NL Central matchup. The Marlins travel up to Cincinnati to face off against the Reds. Zach Thompson on the mound facing off against Luis Castillo. Castillo struggled, but I'm worried because the Marlins on the road have been abysmal. 21 and 40. So I'm staying away from the Marlins money line. I'm taking them plus 1.5 at -110 odds because they are 45 and 35 as underdogs. And Cincinnati, when they are favorites, are 25 and 42. They are not good when they are favored by a run and a half. Cincinnati has only been winning by 1 run, if any, when they are favored. Luis Castillo has struggled mightily this season. He is 6 and 12. His ERA is at a 4.5. I had him on a fantasy team earlier on in the season. His ERA was in the sixes all the way into May, I believe. So I have no faith in Luis Castillo. The Marlins, though, on the road have me reserved enough that I'm not taking that money line at plus 205, though. So I'm taking the run line plus 1.5 runs at -110 value. Feels like I'm taking a spread in football with the -110 there.
Yeah, I don't love this bet for you, Higgins. The Reds are in the thick of the playoff race. They need to be feasting on the Miami Marlins right now. And to be honest, they have the better lineup. And I know you gave the Luis Castillo stats from this year. Still going to say they have the better pitcher in this matchup. So better lineup, better pitcher, team that needs it, all pointing Reds. My guy Higgins playing the contrarian side here, but I cannot get down with you, Higgins. I'm not going to bet it. I don't want to be disrespectful and, just fade you, but I'm going to root for you, Higgins. I'm going to root that Miami only loses by a run here and you nice cover and get the dub.
All right, well, I appreciate the opinion. I gave out my thoughts on it. I think the Marlins are going to be able to cover, but it's interesting. I mean, Luis Castillo struggled mightily this season. Brett, let's move on to some money line magic in a game that both sides kind of struggled to get the bats going. And you might be familiar with this because one of these teams you are a personal fan of, the New York Mets. They've been having a bit of a funk recently, but did they wake up a little bit on Wednesday against the Giants?
Well, Higgins, Wednesday morning, Steve Cohen sends a tweet out that, maybe some fans liked. I don't, I guess that's like a take people have had on TV today. So maybe some fans are fans of it, but I cannot imagine it plays well in the clubhouse, in that front office, the people that are working every day to build the team. Can't imagine they were too thrilled. So the Mets kind of forced to wake up a little bit, Higgins.
Not something that we see in baseball either. I mean, we've had some vocal owners in the NFL, i.e., Jerry Jones. We've had some vocal owners in NBA, i.e., Mark Cuban and others. But I mean, MLB has always been kind of quiet up until recent years, so it's interesting. But let's talk about Wednesday's game. The Mets playing against the San Francisco Giants, and Lamont Wade Jr. would get the scoring started. He'd hit a RBI double in the bottom of the third inning to give the San Francisco Giants a 1-0 lead. But then the waters would calm right back down, and there wouldn't be any scoring until the top of the ninth when J.D. Davis hit a sacrifice fly to knock in Pete Alonso, force extra innings because even though there's no scoring in this one, Brett, we needed a few extra innings to have it be decided.
Absolutely. We hadn't seen enough outs yet.
We needed to see more of the bullpens, I think, is what everyone really wanted.
Yeah, exactly. We need to see more strikeouts, please.
So both teams would put another run on the board in the 11th inning, but in the top of the 12th is when things got interesting because Kevin Pillar hit a 3-run home run, and then Chance Sisco would hit an RBI double. Chance Sisco, what a name, I gotta say. And the Mets put up 4 runs in the top of the 12th, hold San Francisco from scoring any runs in the bottom of the 12th, and the Mets win 6-2 in a game that just had 1 run scored going into the ninth inning, and there's 8 runs scored. What a game!
Yeah, wild finish, Higgins. You mentioned it. All the runs coming in the 11th and the 12th there. Ninth, I guess, 11th and 12th. But it was definitely a weird game, a weird day in Mets land because you've got your team hanging on for dear life. You've got your owner tweeting. They needed a win. They responded. They got the win. It's kind of nice to actually see them fight back in a game where they weren't scoring and managed to scrape across 6 runs. They needed that. Like the bats have been dead. So hopefully this gives them a little confidence going into a series with the Dodgers. Yes, it does not get any easier for my New York Mets, but Higgins, it gets a little bit easier in September. We get a few games against the Nationals and a few really big ones against the Phillies. So if the Mets can just tread water here against the Giants and the Dodgers on this West Coast trip, we'll be okay.
A tough road stretch indeed for the Mets, and Brett, the Mets and Giants fans weren't the only ones biting their nails going to the end of this game because the over-under for this game was at 9. So
Ooh.
so after a 4-run top of the 12th inning, all of a sudden this over-under is in play. That wasn't in play all day long. Whoever was on this under was sitting good with only 1 run scored heading into the ninth, and they're like, okay. It heads to extra innings. They still got plenty of room. They're like, okay. 2 runs are scored in the 11th. Okay, still got 4 runs of room, and then boom, the top of the 12th. It's getting a little hot all of a sudden. They escape by the skin of their teeth. What a game! What a game!
Yeah, crazy outcome there for sure, Higgins.
Today's episode is brought to you by DB. DB is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released, and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you are able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. I can't stress enough how important it is to find the right luggage for every travel scenario. We are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off your next purchase by using the code POD10 or going to the link in our show's description. DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. Now, Brett, like I mentioned at the top of the show, the MLB is not the only thing that we have going on in the middle of August, although day in and day out it might be, but heading into the weekend, we got some NFL preseason going on. We both dipped our toes in the water last week. You had a great start to your NFL season. What are we looking at this week?
Higgins, I'm looking at two Saturday games. One of them actually involves my New York Jets. They're taking on the Green Bay Packers. The over-under in this one's set at 34. I imagine, Higgins, it's set there because maybe we anticipate Zach Wilson getting a few more snaps in what we will consider the final tune-up game. Probably no one plays in week 3 of the preseason, which is now the final game. But Higgins, on the other side of the field, I'm not banking on seeing Aaron Rodgers ever in the preseason, right? So
Absolutely.
QB1's out. QB2 injured his shoulder last week, Jordan Love, so he's not playing this week. So I'm looking at QB3, Ben Kirk, former quarterback from Virginia, might have been on the Falcons practice squad last year, maybe before the Packers. I might know a little bit about him, but that's about it, Higgins. And then they bring back Jake Doliega. I apologize to Jake. I'm sure he's a great quarterback. He works very hard at his craft. I'm unfamiliar with you, Jake, so I will familiarize myself with you on Saturday night. I know you spent a cup of coffee on the Bengals practice squad. I know you've been in Green Bay camp once or twice before this summer with their quarterback troubles. So Higgins, he has some familiarity with the offense, but I've watched the Jets play offense my whole life. I've seen third and fourth string quarterbacks in this league my whole life. This is going to be a low scoring football game, my friend.
So just taking the unders like you did last week. I like it. And just I think it's already a win for the Jets at the sportsbook considering you get to say that you were favorites over the Packers this season. I mean, just shows the impact that Zach Wilson's having on the New York Jets right out of the gate.
That's one take. But I'll find myself on another game too, Higgins. Again, similar situation. QB1 in Dallas. Not going to play in this one. Dak Prescott recovering from the shoulder and the ankle and all of it. So he's out. Hopefully QB1 in Houston. I don't even know if you want to say that. The FBI is involved now, but Deshaun Watson's not playing. My guess is Tyrod Taylor doesn't play very much. He doesn't really need it. And, Davis Mills versus Ben DiNucci. Does that do anything for you, Higgins?
I would say not. I would say no.
Well, I'm going to go under 37.5 in this one, too. Maybe Garrett Gilbert does something for you, no?
No. I'm just happy that Tyrod Taylor found another team away from the Chargers medical staff. Brett, I am going to find myself putting together a preseason parlay, though, and it's got some interesting Higgins reasoning as always. So, the Baltimore Ravens got the win against the New Orleans Saints in week 1 of the NFL preseason, meaning that if the Ravens win this week, they tie the record for most consecutive exhibition victories in the NFL's history at 18. The Baltimore Ravens have not lost a preseason game since 2016. But the Ravens are minus 170 at the money line. And that's what this stat's about, is the money line. So I'm not trusting a spread in this scenario. So I saw the minus 170. That's too deep for me to take it independently. So I'm looking for parlay partners. And guess what? The Cowboys are minus 200. So I'm looking. They're playing the Carolina Panthers. There is some
No, they're
caution.
playing the Texans.
Sorry. The Ravens are playing the Panthers. The Dallas Cowboys are playing the Texans. I mistake myself there. You're right. The Cowboys minus 200, though. And guess what other coach has extreme success in the preseason? Mike McCarthy. Specifically, Mike McCarthy has success in week 2 of the preseason. He's 10-3. John Harbaugh's 9-3 in week 2 of the preseason. I'm combining these two, throw them together for a why not parlay at plus 138. Honestly, I brought up Carolina mistakenly against Dallas because that's my main worry. Is Carolina with PJ Walker. If you saw how he played in the XFL, if you saw how Brett and I talked about him when he was in the XFL, if you saw him play last week with the Carolina Panthers, you should know that he is a legitimate threat for that quarterback position. And so that's my only concern with this parlay, to be honest, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just be honest because that's my role here,
Do it.
right? Just
Do
be
it.
honest. So I'll say this: the week 2 stats that you threw out there, Higgins, very nice, but those are from 4-week preseason, so they're meaningless. And the the other thing is, you're right. PJ Walker, great quarterback for Carolina, potentially to have coming off the bench, kind of electric with his legs, can make some throws. So, kind of the guy you need to in a certain emergency situation where he can make a few spark plug plays, maybe get you a third down conversion with his feet. So, good points there. Higgins, what concerns me is the Cowboys part of this because honestly, if I'm Dallas, why am I playing any of my start? Like, why am I throwing Zeke out there? Why am I risking this? I want this team healthy for week 1. And honestly, this Texans team, these are a lot of guys fighting for jobs that might not get jobs if they were on other teams. They might be slightly, I don't want to say more motivated because every time you step on the field, you want to win and compete, right? But, these guys might have a little bit more of a reason to go out there and make a play like, oh shit, I'm on this bottom feeding team in the NFL. If I can't make this team, it might be over for me. Let me go out here and make this team have a good year, get some touches. And also the quarterback play. I think Driscoll is an NFL backup quarterback. I mean, is he a guy I want to be starting any week? No. But better than DiNucci, better than Garrett Gilbert. I would lean there. Davis Mills, the guy they took in, I want to say the second round. I could be mistaken. It might have been a third round pick. But either way, highly touted prospect going into college. Was very injured at Stanford. I would say he's better than DiNucci and Garrett Gilbert, or at least I'm more excited about his potential, right? So I would lean quarterback play with Houston, but I'll give you this. I would say I'd probably lean Mike McCarthy blind over David Culley, just because I've never seen David Culley coach a game in my life. So I'll take a guy with a Super Bowl championship. So maybe he does get it done. You mentioned his week 2 stat, which I called useless, but maybe he's really proud of that week 2 stat, Higgins, and just wants to keep it rolling.
Well, I think Mike McCarthy is proud of that week 2 stat because his week 1 he's 6-9. First off,
but
nice.
but he's
But
proud
his
of
week
that.
2 stat he's 10-3. Week 3 he was 7-6, and week 4 he's 5-8. Week 2 in the preseason is the only example that Mike McCarthy has in terms of an evaluating standpoint with wins and losses for the preseason in that argument. I would say you and I look at Houston, though, a little bit differently. You're worried because Houston's a bottom feeding team, so there's a lot more competition and hunger by the guys that might be playing. And that might be true, but I look at them as Houston's the bottom feeding team, the team that, if you look at it, they're the betting favorite to finish with the worst record in the NFL this season right now, a large part of that has to do with the question marks surrounding Deshaun Watson at quarterback, obviously, but it's also because the roster problems extend way beyond that quarterback spot. I mean, Houston has a bad roster, Brett. They are a bad team, and we know this going into the season. So I'm not expecting them to play well. I don't expect them to even play well in the preseason. So I'm taking this parlay. It's my what if parlay. That's what I'm calling it, though. That's what I'm calling it, is the what if parlay.
Yeah, Higgins, best of luck to you on that, and I'm rooting for you. I'm wishing you nothing but the best. I guess my last statement on that game, on the Cowboys Texans game, right, would just be you're right. The Texans starters, their top 22, are probably the worst top 22 in the NFL. But that doesn't mean 23 through 53 are the worst 23 through 53. They could be the 23rd ranked 23 through 53, and that's who's playing on Tuesday. So there could be 7 groups worse than that. I don't know where their secondary groups rank compared to other teams' drop offs, but their drop off's going to be much less.
Any given Sunday, or in this case, Saturday. In this case, Saturday. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. It'll be an interesting game. You and I each have some action on that game, so the NBB crowd will definitely be paying attention. Brett, before we get out of the NFL, though, I do just want to clarify, because I mentioned it haphazardly last episode, that I am formally taking the passing yards single season record to be broken. It's still being offered at the Oregon Sportsbook. Yes, plus 190. I already placed it. I put 5 units on this, Brett, because with the extra game, like we talked about, with the names that are still around that have broken this record or have been in the top 10 for most passing yards in a single season, I really think it's possible. I really think it's going to happen with this extra game. So plus 190, 5 units on it. It's a 5 unit play. But I'll be nice. I'm not going to make it my pick of the pod so we don't have one just lingering out in the air for the whole season.
5 units. Wow, you are feeling good, Higgins. But I'll let you go first for the pick of the pod because you're on a nice little win streak, so I wouldn't want to break it up.
Thank you. And by doing the manners, I helped you break out of your win streak. Hopefully we can just keep it going, keep it green. I'm going back to the baseball, talking about the over-under line that, like I said, just really doesn't make sense to me. Over 8.5 in the Baltimore Orioles versus Tampa Bay Rays game. Tampa Bay is already one of the better teams at hitting an over-under in the MLB. And so far in this series against Baltimore, the first 2 games of the series, Tampa Bay would have hit this over on their own. They've scored 9 runs and 10 runs in those games. And then tonight, Brett, that game was ongoing when we were first talking about it. It has now gone final. Tampa Bay won that game 8-4. So 8.5 runs really does not make sense to me, especially when you look at Jorge Lopez on the mound for the Orioles, who has an ERA north of 6. You got Shane McClanahan on the mound for Tampa Bay with an ERA of a 3.73. So 8.5. Like I said up top, it may be a trap game, but I'm going to fall for this trap because it's just too juicy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good number for you, Higgins, to go over on. So I'm with it, and I'll be rooting for you. I'm gonna find myself on the Texans Cowboys game Saturday night, but I'm going with my preseason unders, Higgins. It's been one of my favorite bets for a few years now, but preseason unders. No one's trying to show too much. No one's trying to win. Texans Cowboys under 37.5. No Dak in this one. I guess I'd be like kind of surprised if I see Zeke for more than a series. Like, maybe he goes out there for a series, gets a few runs, gets hit before the NFL season starts, like once or twice. But you don't really want him getting hit in an uncontrolled environment. You don't really want to lose Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, or Michael Gallup. So just keep those guys healthy, get those twos some reps, and, hit this under 37.5 here, Higgins.
Yeah, and Unders really seem to be the play in the NFL preseason, Brett. I think I saw a stat during week one that showed a large majority of not just the public money, but the sharp money was on the unders. And a lot of them still hit anyways, so we'll see how it goes in week two. I like your play. I have found my own way to get on that same game, but we're not breaking the pillars, so we're good. My pick of the pods in baseball on an over under, and you already know I'm taking the over because it's always an over for me. There's some golf going on this weekend. There's some UFC going on this weekend that I'll be taking a look at as we get closer to Saturday. So make sure to follow us on social media as I'll be sending out some picks in between now and our next episode. That's at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page and YouTube channel. This has been episode 159 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again after the weekend.